Here we are now at video number 62. And so we've come quite a long way down the rabbit hole. And at this point in time, if you've been following along from video number 1 and you've watched all of the previous videos, you should have enough information to understand what you need to do. Simply pay it forward. Everything you've learned in this video series should be paid forward to your domestics. So from here on, as we go down the rabbit hole, what I can do is continue to give you evidences, perhaps some other commands, and reinforce everything that you should now understand, and encourage you to do it, and perhaps also give you some comfort that you are indeed that very small group of people, the remnant that the entire Bible was written for, to help you understand ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, to help you understand that it's you, and that you really need to do something, to observe God's commandment. In John chapter 15, you in turn are to bear witness. And for doing these things, you'll get an enormous blessing. So, in this video, I'd like to talk a little about the end of the world. So, it's interesting to think, back when I was a Jehovah's Witness, prior to being disfellowshipped, when I went in the door-to-door ministry, that topic would come up often. The end of the world. And so, yeah, I discussed that topic with quite a large number of householders. And I'm certain that you did too, if you were Jehovah's Witness going out in the ministry. But I think if I was to do that today, it should be incredibly interesting going from door to door talking to people about the end of the world. Why? Well, if you've been watching the news, both the mainstream media and any kind of alternate media that you can find now on YouTube or anywhere else on the internet, have you noticed that secular people, pagans, they also think it's the end of the world, but for different reasons, like climate change, carbon dioxide. So if I was to go in the door-to-door ministry today talking about the end of the world, I'd probably find people would be more interested, because it used to be just us, Jehovah's Witnesses, banging on doors saying the world is ending. And now, even in the news, politicians, the United Nations, there's governments all around the world, at least 190 countries who've put together a commission to understand what they might need to do to stop the world from ending. There's the Extinction Rebellion movement recently starting, where people are protesting in the streets. And the reason why is because these people are convinced that the world is ending. Imagine that. Pagans, secular people, atheists, absolutely convinced that the world is going to end. And politicians who are now being voted into office simply because they're using that as their platform, climate change, and that we have to do something about it, otherwise the world will end. Recently in Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was re-elected, and he too used that as a significant portion of his election platform, that we absolutely have to do something about what they're calling climate change, otherwise the world will end. So I can just imagine what it might be like now in the door-to-door ministry. It must be very different to what I experienced, because we were laughed at by the householder. What do you mean the world's going to end? And yet now I would expect to find people saying, yes, yeah, we know the world's ending. Look at the climate change. Look at the pollution. Look at the horrific weather anomalies, the floods, the droughts, the hurricanes, the typhoons, the earthquakes. Yeah. So if you have been keeping up with the news, that is using up a significant portion of what I'm seeing. People, pagans, atheists, who are now absolutely convinced that the world is ending. So I find it quite ironic that when I watch many YouTube videos now being done by ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, they now laugh at what they used to say in the ministry about the world ending and Armageddon. They're making a joke out of the things that we used to say in the door-to-door ministry, and they seem to be completely oblivious to what's happening in the world. Even ex-Jehovah's Witnesses can't see it. They cannot see what pagans and atheists and secular humanist organizations, including the United Nations, who are now saying the world's going to end if we don't do something. So they're all convinced the world is going to end. So what about you? Have you been looking at some of the horrific things that are now happening around the whole world? There's some YouTube channels run mostly by Christians where people are curating or collecting together some of the truly horrific things that are happening now in the world. And have you watched those videos? So I've been following a few of these YouTube channels, like one's called The Two Preachers, a couple of Christians who have been curating on at least a weekly basis some of these events. And if you watch their videos, they're really horrific. And they've made at least 40 videos now for 40 weeks. They've been collecting together the things happening in the world. And there's some other channels, like I believe one of them is called Last Messages. And so there are some Christians recognizing that, yeah, this is what the Bible said would happen. And they're curating or collecting these things and showing them to the world. So one of the really strange things that I don't understand is that all these climate change advocates, the atheists, they're not doing the same. I can't find a scientific or secular YouTube channel that's curating these horrific events that are happening all around the world. And I think if someone wants to prove their position, it would be something they would do. But even more strange is that the governing body itself, they could be doing the same and proving that, yes, it's the end of the world. We told you. But I haven't seen them do it. But I might be wrong. So correct me, please, in the comments if it's simply something that I've missed. And by the way, if anyone in my audience has found other YouTube channels who are curating or collecting video footage of anomalous weather events, then let me know. I'd like to watch them. So I'll put a few links below this video just for your attention. But I suspect that you've probably already seen those kind of videos. But if not, then I'll give you a few links and recommend that you take a look. Like millions of cattle drowning in floods in the United States. Unbelievable floods where millions of acres of crops were completely wiped out. And on YouTube there are now channels dealing with agriculture, like third-party channels, and these people are convinced there's going to be a famine. There has to be, because of the floods and also the droughts. So, what about you? Have you seen those things, and are you giving them your consideration? Are we living in the final part of the days? So, perhaps you don't get any comfort from that. And remember, at the start of the video, I told you I wanted to give you some comfort and encouragement. And here I am likely frightening you. So, what do you think? Is it the end of the world? Are we living in the final part of the days? Well, let me read you a scripture. Okay, so here it is. It's in Jeremiah chapter 30, and I'll start in verse 23. Listen carefully. Look, a windstorm of Jehovah, rage itself has gone forth, an onward-sweeping tempest. Upon the head of the wicked ones it will whirl. The burning anger of Jehovah will not turn back until he will have executed, until he will have carried out the ideas of his heart. In the final part of the days, you people will give your consideration to it. So, are you giving it your consideration? Is Jehovah doing exactly what he said he would do? And will it be an onward sweeping? Will it continue? Will those horrific things continue until Jehovah has executed exactly what he said he would do? Are you giving your consideration to these things? So, I'm going to read the next verse. Listen carefully to this. It says, at that time. What time? The time that you're giving your consideration to the windstorm of Jehovah going forth. Let me start again. At that time is the utterance of Jehovah. I shall become God to all the families of Israel, and as for them, they will become my people. So, are you giving your consideration to these things? Perhaps as a disfellowshipped ex-Jehovah's Witness, you're not. But the rest of the world is. The pagans, the atheists, the scientists, the UN, the politicians, they're giving their consideration to the end of the world, to events that make them believe the world is indeed ending. They just don't attribute it to Jehovah. They call it climate change, or Extinction Rebellion is the closest I've found to something that suggests the end of the world. So, it says here, at that time, as for them, they will become my people. So here's where the comfort part comes in, and if you've been following along in this video series, you already understand what I'm going to read to you. That's right. Romans 9, verse 25. Listen carefully. Here it is. It is, as he says also in Hosea, those not my people, I will call my people. And her who is not beloved, beloved. And in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there they will be called sons of the living God. Name of person is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. You are not my people. In the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there they will be called sons of the living God. Those not my people, I will call my people. Remember what it said in Jeremiah? At that time is the utterance of Jehovah. I shall become God to all the families of Israel. And as for them, they will become my people. So, are we living in the final part of the days? And are you giving your consideration to these things? So yeah, even in the news, scientists, politicians, United Nations, coalitions of at least 190 countries are all agreeing that the world's going to end. There's protests, people marching in the streets saying that there has to be something done about it because we have maybe 12 years left. There are some reports, some newspapers saying if we don't do anything in 3 years, the world's going to end. There's people doing rebellion called the Extinction Rebellion, because these people are absolutely convinced that the world's going to end. And they're pagans, atheists, humanists who believe this. So they're afraid. They really are afraid that the world is going to end. And it is. It is ending. Right? So I'm going to read another scripture which I hope will give you some comfort. My audience, very special audience of this fellowship, Jehovah's Witnesses. So here we go. It's in Luke chapter 21 and verse 25. And this is Jesus Christ speaking here. He said, also, there will be signs in sun and moon and stars. So, if you've been following along in this video series, we've already talked about the great sign. The woman in heaven with 12 stars above her head and the sun and the moon. And we've discussed that several times in several videos in this series. So we've seen those signs. Those signs have been seen. And I invited you to do a search on YouTube for September 23rd, 2017. And you'll see that, yeah, there was a great sign in the sun and the moon and the stars. So, let me start again. Also, there will be signs in sun and moon and stars. And on the earth, anguish of nations, not knowing the way out because of the roaring of the sea and its agitation. While men become faint out of fear and expectation of the things coming upon the inhabited earth. So, yeah, they really are afraid that the world is going to end. Their hearts are indeed becoming faint out of fear about what's going to happen. So it goes on to say, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Jesus Christ will appear. But as these things start to occur, raise yourselves erect and lift your heads up, because your deliverance is getting near. So, remember what it said in Isaiah chapter 66 verse 5? He must appear with rejoicing on your part. And so, if you've reached this video number 62, and you've watched all the other videos, then you should now have an enormous amount of comfort. If you're just watching, if you've just joined this video series for the first time, then there's an enormous amount of convincing evidences prior to this that have been discussed that you need to watch. So, and you need to watch them so you understand exactly what you should be doing, so that you might be the one standing when Jesus Christ does appear. Now that you can see that it truly is imminent. But before that, you'll have to understand how Jesus Christ has already come as a thief and taken people away. And if you're a disfellowshipped Jehovah's Witness, you're one of the people that he's taken, and no one noticed. So, if perhaps you've understood a few things in this video and you need to understand more, then you really should catch up. Keep your lamps filled with oil so that you can be prepared and ready with something to say to Jesus Christ, and that you might be found standing in front of him when he does appear, that you can raise yourself up and stand erect because your deliverance is near. Fill your lamps. Get ready. You know what to do if you've been watching all of the videos so far in this series. I truly hope that you are doing all those things, that all of those commandments that we've discussed. You in turn are to bear witness.